Hey there, friends and enemies, Joe here again, and today I wanted to go over all the exotic armors that are going to be meta in Destiny 2 with Arc 3.0. I am predicting that these are going to be absolutely insane, so you definitely want to try to farm for good rolls for them now if you don't have one, or at least get it if you don't already have one in the collections. So, first and foremost, the Titans. Man, as a Titan main, I'm a little bummed because there's not a whole lot of great arc options. However, I do feel like something like Insurmountable Skull Fort is going to be absolutely cracked. Arc melee kills grant health and melee energy. Depending on how they rearrange the melee, what kind of buffs you can get with it, I really feel like this is going to be insane. And if I'm being honest, I think this is going to be complained about like Lorelei Splendor is with the Solar Titans right now. That's just my guess. I think this is going to be insane. It hasn't really seen a lot of use since they changed up shoulder charges. You can't get your shoulder charge back in a one-hit kill in PvP. However, I think all of that's about to change, and this is the number one exotic I'd be on the look for that hasn't been used in a while for the Titans for sure. Then we've got Eternal Warrior. This one might be okay, depending on how they adjust Fist of Havoc. Having an overshield might be nice, but normally is not really all that necessary. So this one I just don't see being super popular despite the potential it has. And now I'm going over all of these exotics that really only buff the arc abilities and supers and all that kind of stuff. Not necessarily your general syntheseps or something like that, because I feel like those are going to be good across the board instead of just specifically with some of these arc builds. So, and like I said, there's not a whole lot. Like if you're looking through the Titans, there's just not many options for arc. You have obviously Curus, which has been the dominant PvE exotic for Arc Titans for since its launch, basically. And I don't see that changing as far as PvE if you want just heavy damage. But there may be some changes that make this not as viable. So maybe they nerf the Thunder Crash a little bit. So that's just something to keep in mind. But other than that, I'm going to be real honest. Like, there's not a whole lot here with the Titans for Arc. And that's a major bummer because I am a Titan main, if you didn't know. So I'll probably stick to your Armamentariums or your Heart of Inmost Light, some of those that I already use all the time that are good all around but don't necessarily buff Arc specifically. Then we've got the Hunter. I don't play Hunter a whole lot. I know, blasphemous in the PvP community, but I think there's a lot of good options for the Hunter to be really, really viable with Arc 3.0. And you got Blight Ranger. This is the new one. Redirecting with your Arc Staff deal increased damage. Depending on how the aspects and the fragments work, I could really see an Arc Redirect kind of meta almost if they do provide some ways to continuously buff that and make it so you're able to deflect a lot of things and maybe regenerate some of your super while you're deflecting, all that kind of stuff. So that's something just to keep an eye on. I don't necessarily think it's going to be the most viable, but it's an option that might be there. So we'll have to wait and see. Then you've got some others like Liar's Handshake, Cross Counter, Regenerates Health. This one was busted for a long time in PvE, and there's a chance that it'll come back. Just like the Skull Fort, this is one that I would keep an eye on because I feel like with the way the regenerating health and dealing extra damage, there's a very good chance that with some of your fragments and aspects, you're going to be able to really lean into the melee, and this might be insane again, not only in PvP, but potentially in PvE, especially if they get adjustments to the way their secondary melee works. So just something to keep an eye on, and if it does kind of go crazy, I would not be shocked at all. From there, Chained Arc Staff hits buff damage and duration. This is one that I really am hopeful that will be viable in PvE. Now, the problem I have with the Arc Staff in PvE is there's just so much better options. So that's one place where I really hope for the Hunter mains they make it viable, because you really cannot use Arc Staff in PvE basically at all when you're comparing it to Shadow Shot, to the solar subclass. Like, it's just, you either do enhanced damage, you got crowd control, you can take out a bunch of, it's just, you can have ad clear, but it's just not the best option. And so that's where I'm hopeful, if they buff the super, if they make it viable in PvE, if they give you aspects and fragments that allow you to really lean into your super, Raid Flux is the one that I think is going to benefit the most. And I'm really hopeful, because I feel like it could be very, very good if that does happen. Lucky Raspberry probably be annoying, because everyone can have, like, you can have arc bolt grenades, and if you're able to lean into that and buff your grenades, then this is one that I think will be really solid to keep an eye out, especially in PvE or PvP, where there are better options, but it could be very, very annoying if we get an arc bolt grenade meta for sure. And then guarding doesn't consume energy. So this is one that I don't think will ever be super viable, because guarding doesn't consume energy just does not help a whole lot in a lot of different ways, unless they make it so where guarding will buff your teammates, much like your Titan super or the Void half shield, where you're able to guard and generate orbs, and not only that, but you're also able to let your ally shoot through it, something like that. So at this point, I don't see that being very, very good, which is unfortunate, but I think that might be all of them for arc specific. Yeah. So unfortunately, again, there's not as many options as I would have loved. But yeah, even with being able to cancel and save super energy, thank you Dreadnought for that. I don't think it's still good enough at this point, especially with the changes to supers, where you get them less often. So there needs to be something else there to help buff this, because when you used to get your super back really quickly and you'd have multiple supers in a match, that was handy because you could use it over multiple rounds. Now you use it in like trials or something, you're probably not getting it back, or if you use it in sixes, you might not get it back either. So kind of defeats the purpose there with the super changes, in my opinion. Now we move on to the Warlock. Starting off, we got Crown of Tempest, ability kills, arc ability kills, restore arc abilities, which is nice. I think this is one that could create a very fun loop in the arc Warlock as it's buffed to match Solar and Void 3.0, especially as we see the seasonal mods. So this one is one I think will be very good. Everyone's mostly used it for the super ability, but I think for if you get a better melee, if you get a better grenade, if you are able to buff those, now all of a sudden you're looking at an overall S tier exotic armor. So that's something to keep in mind. I think it could be very, very good, and that's one I would keep an eye on for sure. Try to get a good roll on for your builds if at all possible. Then we have Getaway Artist. This is one of my all-time favorite Warlock exotics. I've used it a lot, and the way they've changed up some of the Arc Buddy type abilities, I'm very excited about. I know No Time to Explain is cracked in PvP right now, and adding Getaway Artist to it was one of my favorite builds back in the day. So for that reason, I'm excited to see where this goes, how they change up the Arc Buddy, and what kind of buffs you're going to get to it, because I think this could be really fun, if not overpowered, you know. See, a lot of these are still generic, which is cool, but I'm looking only at the arc specific buffs. Like this, Rifts create an arc release shockwave when cast. This is just like Kepri's Horn for the Titan. It's good for shenanigans, but not really powerful unless they do some modifications to it to make it very good, but I don't see that happening personally. Storm Dancer's Brace. This one might be the one that I would recommend getting the most if you don't have it and if you don't have a good roll for it. Each target you defeat with Storm Trance increases the damage you deal with it and refunds super energy when Storm Trance ends. Now, Storm Trance is not great right now, PvE or PvP. However, with the arc builds, if you're able to get some increased damage with your Storm Trance, if you're really able to buff that and do heavy ad clear or take out an entire team in PvP, this potentially could be very fun. I don't know, because of the changes to supers in PvP, if super specific exotics are worth it anymore, because you really don't get them often enough. However, because most of the time you want to buff your neutral game. However, I think this one will still be very good and hopefully excellent in PvE if everything goes as I expect it to. Extending Chaos Reach, again, this one is really good. Able to shut it down, get your energy back, and if they buff Chaos Reach back to on the same level as your Blade Barrage, as your Thunder Crash, that kind of stuff, then this will once again be very good, and that's what I'm hoping, because I would like for all classes to have a couple options when it comes to your DPS super, or at least a couple viable options. Like right now, Chaos Reach isn't really viable anywhere, and that's really unfortunate. I think that's all of them. Yeah, so we've had a lot of different arc options across the board, but for me, if I had a single amount, I would say Storm Dancer's Brace for the Warlock. I would say the Liar's Handshake for the Hunter, although Raiden Flux potentially, but I don't know if I see that. And then finally we've got the Insurmountable Skull Fort for the Titan. Those would be the three top recommendations for what you would want to snag right away before Arc 3.0 drops. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. My name is JoPa, and I'll catch you all later. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. Almost forgot, but yeah, make sure you're subscribed. I'm going to have loads of Arc 3.0 content on the channel going forward, so definitely stay tuned for that. I'll catch y'all later.